Hello, my friends. Okay, so we're going to continue with our series of Arudha Lagna with planets in different houses for your Arudha Lagna. And today we're going to be talking about the exceptions. There's a lot of controversy among Vedic astrologers as to what houses can and cannot be the Arudha Lagna. And so I'm going to be sharing that with you, and I'm going to be sharing with you my thoughts. I finally come to a coherent consensus about which houses can be Arudha Lagna and which can't. And I've come to an understanding of what the karmic reason for the Arudha Lagna is. And to my knowledge, I don't think any Vedic astrologer has talked about this. And I've come to realize that unless you understand this principle, then you're just going to be forced to follow some belief, some rule. And it really takes a deep understanding of what the Arudha Lagna is from a karmic standpoint, why we have them, okay? So if you're not familiar with your Arudha Lagna, you can go up here to astrology.thunderwizard.com and get a reading. This is one of the things we focus on when we give readings, is the Arudha Lagna. So what is the Arudha Lagna? Arudha means the mount, but it's more commonly called the reflection. The Lagna is your rising sign, your ascendant. And in Vedic astrology, we use the ascendant as your sign. It is the primary thing that we look for. Second in importance would be the moon sign, and third in importance would be the sun sign. So this is one of the things that makes it different from Western astrology. Your Lagna is your ascendant, and Lagna means screwed into place. That's what happens when you're born. Your soul is screwed into place, and you are stamped on your forehead with the associations with the sign that was rising in the east. That's why we use it. It means that your personality is really your vantage point. So I was born with a Leo rising. What that means is that my soul looks at my life from the vantage point and through the glasses of the Leo ascendant sign. So whatever your sign is, Aries, Gemini, Capricorn, whatever it is, that's the glasses that you wear. So that's why it's your personality. The truth is, your personality is a conglomeration of a bunch of different things. It is your rising sign, it is your moon sign, it is your sun sign, it is your Arudha, it is your Rahu and your Ketu, and it's everything. But the most practical understanding is that from your viewpoint, you look at your world, which are the houses, and how you relate to different areas of your life is from your Arudha. Now, the Arudha Lagna is sorry, did I say Arudha? From your Lagna. You look at it from the vantage point of your Lagna. This was a Freudian slip. Your Arudha, the Aruta of your Lagna is the mount. So what I teach is that your Arudha is your vehicle that empowers you in this life to achieve success. And what I've come to realize, and I'm going to explain it in this video, is that this is from karmic issues, okay? So your Arudha is actually rooted in unresolved karmic issues having to do with your identity. And so depending on how removed you are from these ego issues with your identity, this is going to tell you how comfortable you are with your Arudha, or even if you have one. So what I'm going to introduce here is that there are some people that don't have a strong Arudha. And what that means is that in this lifetime, they do not have a karmic issue that they have to work through, which has to do with their sense of self. Here's the deal. When it comes to your identity, you either have a strong identity or you don't. We throw around the word ego, but truth is that there's no such thing as a bad ego. Ego just means self. It's the individuated, separated self. And it's actually, you have to have a healthy, separated sense of self in order to be a healthy, functioning, happy human being. And people who don't have a healthy, integrated, balanced sense of self, this creates all kinds of psychological issues and problems. So what I'm saying here is that the Arudha Lagna, if you have a powerful Arudha Lagna, it means that you have some past life issues having to do with your identity that you need to resolve in this life. Now, as I've said before, the Arudha is your superpower. It's not your vantage point. It's not necessarily who you are. It is how the world sees you. It's more than how they see you, it is how they want to see you. Which means that the whole universe is focused on you playing a certain role and accepting this role. And when you do, the universe rewards you with success in your career. And so it motivates you. It motivates you to face your psychological issues having to do with your identity. And it's a really ingenious way that the universe gets you to focus on challenging issues, but you're only focused on all of the positive feedback you get from it. So to understand this more fully, I need to bring you back to something that I've taught before. I have been teaching for years that spiritual powers are not a sign of spiritual evolution. They are a sign of unresolved karmic issues. For instance, if somebody has a gift for healing, like they can either literally put their hands on you and heal you, or they can heal you with their words, or they can heal you by gazing at you. If they have what seems to be a spiritual gift for healing, it doesn't mean that they're spiritually advanced. What it means is this is somebody who in past lives, and it could be 100 lives ago, they caused a lot of damage. They harmed people. And so the way the universe works is, what karma is you have to balance these things out. We hold on to these memories on a deep level, on a soul level. But the universe doesn't work through guilt. This is why the Abrahamic religions don't work, because they're focused on guilt. The universe doesn't work through guilt. The universe looks for ways to motivate you in a positive way. So what ends up happening is that if you have a bunch of harm that you need to heal from people that you may have harmed 10 lives ago or 100 lives ago, then what will happen is that you will be given a healing gift. And the people that come to you for your healing are people who you have harmed in a previous life. And you are simply balancing out that energy. By touching them, you're balancing out the energy. Their experiences are they are healed, and your experience is that you have this spiritual gift. Because you take pleasure in it then. When you go to heal, you're thinking, this feels good, I'm doing good for people, I'm doing good for the universe. What you're not thinking of is, how, gosh, in that past life, I kept that guy, in chains, under the castle, and, it ended up giving him this leg problem, and now in this life, he's got this leg pain, and I'm healing his leg pain, which is really, I'm paying him back for what I did to him in a previous life. If you thought about that, you would never do it, because there would be all this guilt associated with it. So the universe does this fun thing where it becomes fun for you, and it becomes fun for them. Instead of them going, yeah, remember what you did to me 100 lifetimes ago? You owe me. Look, instead of that, you can't get any healing that way. They come and they see this person as giving them a gift and healing them. It's a really beautiful way that the universe has figured out. Well, the Arudha Lagna is similar. This is now my belief. I've been thinking about this because I was about to do the series for the fourth house Arudha. And every time I tried to put a planet in the fourth house and talk about it, something in me just wasn't right. And so I went back and I looked at all of the exceptions. So let's talk about what the exceptions are. According to Parashara, in case you don't know it, you don't need to know, there's ancient sages who had different schools of astrology. Parashara is one of them, and Jaimini is another. And so they both have differing ideas on where to place the Arudha. We all know that how the Arudha is calculated is that you take the Lord of the ascendant sign. So for instance, for me, Leo. The Lord of the sign of Leo is Sun. So to find out where my Arudha is, I look to see where my Sun is. My Sun is in my second house. So what you do is you calculate the same number of houses away from your ascendant, where the Lord sits, you do the same thing. So the second house from the second house is the third house. My Arudha is in the third house. Got it? So if you're in Leo and your Sun is in the third house, then you would count 3 houses from the third house, which is 3, 4, 5. So now your Arudha is the 5th house. That's how you calculate it. Now, according to the Parashara rules, there are exceptions. The exceptions are, according to him, your Arudha can't be the first house. So that would be if you were Leo and Sun was in your first house, then the first house from the first house is the first house. So just going from that, you would say, oh, my Arudha is the first house. But Parashara says, no, that doesn't work. You can't be a reflection of yourself. So you use the natural Arudha, which is the 10th house. The 10th house is your fame. We talk about it, originally it was your career, but that was 1,000, 2,000 years ago. Your career is what you did. John the smith, John the baker, John the plumber. Your last name was what you did for a living. My last name means Danish. It means that my ancestors were Vikings. So it was like, oh yeah, Thor the Danish over there. The Viking guy, so your fame was your name. And usually what you did for your career is how people knew you. But today, it means your fame. It's what you're known for. What you're known for isn't necessarily how people see you, which is your Arudha. So, according to him, if your Arudha lands in the first house, then it can't be the first house, because that's like putting 2 mirrors in front of each other. It just bounces back and forth. It doesn't make any sense. So we go to the natural house, which is the 10th house. The next one is, he says, it can't be the 7th house, because if the first house is the self, then the 7th house is the other. It's your spouse, or it's people in general. And so he says, that doesn't make any sense. Your reflection can't be the other. Now, I've changed my mind about that, and we'll talk about that, but we're just going by his rules. So he says, if your Arudha lands in the 7th house, then you go 10th from that, which would be the 4th house. So the only way, if you have a 4th house Arudha, the only way that you have that is because your Arudha was calculated to be the 7th. Now I'm saying, if I've given you a reading where I've told you that your Arudha was the 4th house, it means that your Arudha really is the 7th, and I'm telling you now, I'm changing my mind. The 7th house is a valid place for the Arudha, but it's not a true Arudha. You still want to use it that way, follow all the rules, but I'll explain why. Parashara was partly right. He was partly right, but I'll explain to you why it's kind of, it's not a true Arudha. And I'll explain why later. All right, so now there's Jaimini. Jaimini says different things. Jaimini gets rid of that and says, no, the Arudha is wherever it is, the 1st house, the 7th house, and so it can be either. Now, I am smack dab in the middle between these 2 guys, and I'll tell you why. I believe now that the 7th can be treated as the Arudha. As I said, I don't believe it's a true Arudha, and you can't use the 1st house as an Arudha. You just can't. I mean, it becomes redundant. It's already your personality. It's already your vantage point. So it's already how your soul identifies with your life is through your 1st house. So to say the 1st house is the 1st house, it's just redundant. And it would be like, going up and looking in a mirror and then shining a spotlight on your face. It becomes narcissistic. It has no reason. The Arudha has a completely different function. And so what it means is, if your Arudha is the 1st house, it means that in this lifetime, you do not have a psychological karmic issue having to do with your identity that you need to focus on. It just means, hey, listen, you get a pass this time and you just get to focus on the 10th house. Just go focus on your fame. It's already there, just go do it. That's your Arudha, is the 10th house. And in my experience, there's not gonna be the same charge around it. So as I think about it, I tried, like I said, I tried to talk about the 4th house planets in the 4th house Arudha, and I just can't. There's no charge there. And the more I thought about it, you know, my intuition, it really does help me out. My intuition saying, listen, there's something you gotta look at here. The 4th house can't be the Arudha. It just can't. There's no charge there. The Arudha is gonna have an emotional, psychological charge to it. There's none there. The 7th house doesn't have a charge to it, but it can be the Arudha. And what it means is, in this lifetime, what needs to happen is you need to focus on others. So you're not gonna have the same intense psychological identity issue that people have who have 3rd house, 5th house, 9th house, and 11th house, okay? Those people who have Arudas in those houses, they're gonna have strong past life karmic issues about their identity that they have to work through. And because this is a past life karmic issue, the universe doesn't guilt you into it. The universe says, hey, look at this. It dangles a carrot in front of you. You're still gonna have to go through all of the psychological issues, identity issues associated with that house. But the payoff is, if you just focus on being that which you will feel a distance from, the universe starts throwing money at you. It says, yeah, success, yeah, and people start saying, yay, look at you. It's like how we encourage little kids. Yay, good for you, you took a poop. Yay, you rode a bike with training wheels. You know, it's a way to encourage you to keep going. It's something that has to be dealt with. So I'll talk about that in a second. So what that means is, if your Arudha is the 7th house and or the 1st/10th house, because the 1st house is really the 10th house, Arudha, it means that in this lifetime you don't have a strong psychological issue that has to be dealt with. In the 7th house, as I said, it means the universe is saying, hey, you do need to focus on other people. You do need to focus on that. Either focus on your relationships and or focus on other people. But it's a general thing, it's not, you know, a major, you know, specific issue. If it's the 10th house, it means in this lifetime, you know what, your identity is fairly balanced when it comes to identity issues in the Arudha, so just focus on your 10th house, you're good to go. All right, so let me explain to you why this is now. So what happens if you have Arudha in the, you can't have the Arudha in the 2nd house, there's no way that that'll work. What if it lands on the 3rd house? Well, the 3rd house is definitely an identity house because it's the house of your communication. So the main lesson here is you got to get out of your own way in order to communicate whatever planet or whatever sign or whatever influence is in there. You know, you've got, I've got Mars in the 3rd house in Libra. It is definitely a battle, me fighting with my aggression. Since I was a little kid, I've always been nonviolent, meaning, well, that's not true. I got in a bunch of fights when I was a little kid, but I ended up, like, I was the little kid in school. I was the shortest kid in school, and I was always getting picked on, so I learned how to fight. I got an older brother that picked on me all the time, so I ended up being the toughest kid in school, even though I was the shortest kid. And so once I started seeing how easy it was for people to get hurt, like, you know, one punch to the, you know, and you could kill somebody, I started deciding that I didn't want to be violent, and I took a vow of nonviolence. You know, when I was in high school, the selective service was just phasing out, so you had to go and register. I remember going and registering at 17. Meaning that if the draft came up, that I would have been drafted, and then we got rid of it, thankfully. But I remember saying that I wasn't gonna shoot anybody. If I ended up having to go into the military, I was gonna do something, and I didn't know what a medic was. I just knew that they ran out and got people and pulled them out. I thought, I'll do that, but I'm not shooting at somebody. So I've always had this penchant for nonviolence, and yet I'm still a warrior. I'm a martial artist, and I have a huge ego. Just the other night, I was walking out after 2 o'clock, and some kids drove by and cursed at me and threatened to kick my ass, and it took everything in me not to say, come on, let's go. I want to fight at the drop of a hat, but I haven't been in a fight since junior high. That's my Arudha. It's an issue. I have to struggle with it. Even to this day, I struggle with it. So it means that it's an identity issue, and it's going to be a struggle for you. So the third house is communication, and so it means you got to get the hell out of your own way to communicate. And so whatever planet is there, whether it's Jupiter, whether it's Rahu, Ketu, Mars, Mercury, whatever moon, whatever planet is there in your third house, in whatever sign, whatever that comes to, that is going to be something that you have a distance from. You may like it. You may like that idea. Like I said, my experience is that the Arudha is something that everybody wants to fantasize being for Halloween. But when you ask them, go do that in life, they're like, no, I can't. That feels silly. That's stupid. That's dumb. And there's some excuse why they can't do it. And so that's why I say, when you look at your Arudha, you make 2 lists. You write a list of all the things you like about your Arudha, and then you write a second list of all the things you don't like, you don't relate to, or you're downright uncomfortable with. That second list is going to show you how you are sabotaging your success because of your ego. So remember, a balanced ego is you're comfortable with yourself. You don't have to prove anything to anybody else, but you don't need to kowtow and be less than anybody. You're perfectly okay being you, and you're okay with them being them, and you're not threatened. You don't have to compete. People who constantly have to compete and prove things to other people, talk about how good they are at this and this and that, and it means they got an ego issue. That means that they have some insecurity there, because excess bravado is insecurity. So I'm an insecure person. I'm very insecure. So look, I've got this crazy ego third house thing, where I communicate my opinion all the time. That's why I get into flame wars. You see it, go watch my channel. I get into flame wars all the time. And I don't tolerate, on my live YouTube channels, I don't tolerate people throwing their opinion out. It serves my function because it's my Arudha and it is my job. But at the same time, it's because I've got ego issues. So wherever your Arudha is, you're going to have ego issues about it. And it's the universe saying, I want you to focus on these positive traits that you have in yourself. And I'm not going to let you get away with either overblowing them or hiding them. Because that's what happens. If you fight with your Arudha, then it turns into the dark side. If I fight with the warrior and I try not to be the warrior, I turn into this serial killer guy where I walk down the street and I scare the hell out of everybody. From my perspective, I'm trying to hide, but if you look at it, that's a frightening look, and I scare the crap out of people when I'm hiding. When I smile and I open up and I puff my chest out and I act like a lion, people love it. It's uncomfortable for me, but they love it. Yours is going to be the same, whatever it is. That second list of things that are uncomfortable for you are the ways in which you will succeed and make a ton of money. And again, it's the universe's way of trying to put the carrot out in front of you. Good for you. Come on, boy. You can do it. You can do it. So that you will face your issues and overcome them, and then you don't have to deal with it again. Okay? All right. So the third house is definitely going to be ego issues surrounding communicating. And whatever planetary combination, sign combination is going to tell you what exactly the issue is. Now here's something I have to tell you. You don't have to know this. This is the great thing about it. The great way that the universe works is you don't have to figure out what your issues are. Just focus on the things that make you uncomfortable, go do them, and you will resolve those issues. Trust me, they will come up, you will deal with them. Don't try and figure it out. I know there's a bunch of people already listening to me trying to intellectually figure out what their karmic issue is. Don't. Just live your Arudha, be your Arudha, and trust me, those issues will come up and you will deal with them. Guaranteed. It's a beautiful setup. All right, so what if your Arudha is the 5th house? Well, what is the 5th house? The 5th house is the natural house of Leo, which is the king. It is performance. So it's another house of communication, but it's not. The 3rd house is short-term communication. The 5th house is novels. So you still could be a writer, a teacher, and all that, but you're gonna go into much deeper, longer, issues. If it's performance, you might be an actor, or your Arudha might want you to become an actor, singer, musician, performer. It means study. It means study of esoteric issues. It means mantra, whatever. So if this is your Arudha, it means that there's an identity issue, an unresolved karmic issue having to do with that house. And whatever planet is there and sign and all that will tell you what the issue is. And so that's, again, just live it, find the stuff that makes you uncomfortable or that you feel a distance from, because that's where the reflection comes from. It's a reflection. It's not you, it's a reflection of you. But it's a reflection of you that you haven't fully integrated into your identity from previous lives. And so what ends up is you feel this distance, but you feel this affinity for it. You may have this love-hate relationship with it. And there's a sliding scale. Some people are really comfortable with their Arudha, which just means that you're probably in the last phases of, working through the final issues of it and just enjoying it. If you have a lot of conflict with it, it may mean that there was a recent past life big issue that you were avoiding, and so you feel distance from it. But it is a part of you, it is a part of you that is a power within you that you're avoiding, that you've been, who knows what happened. In a previous life you may have gotten a lot of guilt over it, you avoid it. But the universe is saying, no, this is part of you, this is your power, and you need to integrate this power into yourself, so in this life we're gonna make this an issue. And if you don't really live it, you won't be successful, which means next time around it might be the same Arudha, but even more intense. So the 5th, anything having to do with the 5th house, love making, romance, may mean that you are self-conscious about that, and you need to learn how to free yourself up in the bedroom or with, when relationships are starting out. Could have anything to do with all these other things, okay? So that's the 5th house Arudha. Now, as I've said, the 7th house Arudha means that in this lifetime, the universe is saying, look, you don't have a huge ego, narcissistic issue that we need you to deal with in this lifetime, except, generally speaking, you do need to focus on others. So learn how to be a good partner, learn how to connect with others better, and whatever planet is in there and whatever sign will tell you what the issue is. But again, don't try and figure it out, just live it and you'll work through the issues. So this is why I say the 7th house isn't a true Arudha, because it doesn't have the emotional charge to it. All right, it's an issue that needs to be dealt with, but it's not huge. Okay, so the next Arudha would be the 9th house. So obviously 9th house is religion, and religion, you're definitely going to have ego issues about religion, whether it's you love religion and you lose your identity to it, or you hate religion because you don't want to be told what to do. And then it's, the 9th house is also father figures and authority figures. So you're going to have identity issues about that. Either I want to be one, or I hate them, or something like that. So if the 9th house is your Arudha, it means that when it comes to spirituality and or authority figures, dharma, following your true path in life, following a spiritual path, focusing not on the self, but on, connecting to the universe and being of service. This is all in the 9th house as well. It means that you've got some issues from past lives that you need to work with. And again, the part of that you relate to, great. The part of that Arudha that you don't relate to, it means that the universe is saying, you gotta deal with this, and here, look, and I'll make it easy for you. It's like when I was a kid. When I was a kid, when my dad wanted me to mow the lawn, he'd say, hey, if you mow the lawn, I'll give you $5. You know, but what he was really trying to do is he was trying to teach me, you know, how to have a work ethic and that if I go and work, I get paid for it. He was trying to teach me that. He didn't need me to mow the lawn. He could have done it. He could have hired somebody, but he wanted me to learn some, you know, some work ethic. So he said, you know, and I remember writing a contract with him. I wrote a contract with him that for that summer I would mow the lawn once a week, and if I did that, I'd get $5 or $10 or whatever the hell it was. And by the way, I ended up hating mowing lawns after that, so it didn't work, Dad. And ironically enough, when I moved to Idaho, I ended up having to mow lawns every single week. Not just one, but two big, huge lawns. And I hated it. I was sweating, and it was so stupid. I thought it was ridiculous. I don't do that now. All right, so that's the ninth house. Ninth house is there's going to be identity issues having to do with religion, authority figures, dharma, and living your truth. And focusing on the things that make you uncomfortable are going to be the ways in which you, you know, work through that karma in this lifetime, and the way that you will make money and be successful. That ninth house Arudha will tell you how to do that. And again, the thing to do is, you know, my experience is that, you know, sometimes if you do exactly what your Arudha does, like if you choose that for a living, you will be successful at it. But regardless of where you are in your process, even if you're, you know, if your job is to be a custodian, a janitor, then whatever your Arudha is, you do that with your Arudha, and you will be successful. You'll get promoted, you'll do well in whatever job you do. All right, so that's the ninth house Arudha. What about the 10th house? Well, as we said before, the 10th house only becomes your Arudha if your Arudha lands on your first house, which you can't. I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says. I don't even care what Jaimini says. You know, that it means that it's just a mirror facing itself. It can't be. It's already, in and of itself, it's already functioning like an Arudha. So the Arudha of the first house is naturally the 10th house, your fame. So it just again means that on this lifetime, more so than the 7th. The 7th house says, well, maybe I could be wrong about this, but the 7th house says you've got some issues. You got to learn how to be, you know, deal with other people and have relationships, but it's not a huge deal. The Arudha of the 10th house says, listen, you're just here to be yourself, and today just follow your normal pattern of your Lagna, which says your fame is your 10th house. So just follow that and go after your fame in whatever way that is for you. And you know, it's sort of like you get a pass in this life. Just focus on your 10th house. You're good for this life. We got other stuff next time around, but right now you can just focus on your 10th house. Just be a normal person. 11th house Arudha. So 11th house is the house of gains, the house of gains that you make through your hard work. We definitely have ego issues, identity issues surrounding what we accomplish in the world. I accomplished this in the world. You know, the 11th house is that, the reputation you get, the fame that you get from doing what I did. I spent 20 years doing this and I learned that, and we gain from that. So it's an upachaya house. And so it means it grows over time. So there's going to be strong ego issues connected with the 11th house anyway. But if your Arudha is the 11th house, it means that in this lifetime, you really need to get comfortable with having to accomplish things in this life and enjoying the things that you have earned and worked for. Or, you know, you're going to have to get over yourself and realize, yeah, I've worked really hard and I gained this, but it doesn't mean anything. It's going to be some ego issue, identity issue having to do with gains and fame and networking with a lot of people. So again, the universe doesn't say, listen, you know what your problem is? You have to figure out how to, you know, separate yourself emotionally from what you do. Your worth doesn't come from what you gain in this, or the universe the other side of it, because it's a spectrum, the universe doesn't go and say, listen, you've got to start taking more, credit for the things that you worked for. You've got to stop avoiding that and trying to be so humble all the time. It's false humility. It's pride in reverse. You got to knock it off. The universe doesn't do that. The universe says, hey, you know what? If you allow this house to really be seen, if you try and be this house, you're going to make a shitload of money. You're going to be so famous. You should really do that. And you'll go, I'm so uncomfortable with that. And the universe says, I know, but look at all the money. Go do it. And that way the universe encourages you to work through your issues having to do with that. So, this is why there's no Arudha for the 12th house. The 12th house is about release from this world. So, by the time that, we don't have identity issues about releasing from this world. It's not going to be the 8th house, because the 8th house is already so deep, it's so narcissistic. I'm using that word kind of loosely, but it's really self-involved. The 8th house is deep, deep, deep into the unconscious. So, it's already a house that's out of sight of the rest of the world. It's the hidden things. So it can't be used as an Arudha, because the Arudha is about how you express yourself in the world. And the 8th house isn't about that. It's about how you work internally. The 6th house. The 6th house is about hard work and about illnesses and diseases, and so it's already, and the 6th house is already all about issues. So it's like the 8th house. If you try and focus on that, it just becomes this whirlpool of narcissism, and so it's not about a house that expresses itself out in the world. It's about your own internal experience, and you're not going to have an ego issue. So when I'm using the word ego issue, I'm meaning how you perceive yourself out in the world, and or your issues about how other people perceive you. Because again, the Arudha is about how people see you. So I'm probably going to have to go back and get rid of that. I'm going to have to redo that first video I did about Arudha in different houses, because now that I've really thought it through, there's only the 3rd house, the 5th house, the 7th house, the 9th house, 10th house, and the 11th house. Every other house is not going to have an issue. The 2nd house, you're going to have identity issues there, but there's already so much identity involved in that. Your family life, your ancestry, and that's really, again, more of an internal perspective, not an external expression. Okay? All right, so that's my thought about the Arudha Lagna and the exceptions. So here's what I'm saying again. The Arudha Lagna is what powers and powers is the wrong word. The Arudha Lagna is positive traits that you have that, because of ego, psychological issues you have about it, you have created a distance from that positive trait. And in this life, the universe is saying, listen, you've earned this trait. It is your responsibility to share it with the world. I know it's challenging for you, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to do it, and if you do it, I'll give you $5 every time you mow the lawn. This is what the Arudha is. So this is why I call it your superpower. So, and again, in my experience, if you truly live your Arudha, you will be successful in career as well as in your social life. All right, so now we're going to skip the 4th house Arudha, and the next series is going to be what happens when you have different planets in your 5th house Arudha, and what does that mean? And we'll start with Sun in the 5th house as your Arudha Lagna. Okay? All right, that's it for now. Again, if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, you want to find out what your superpower is, which will give you success in the world, go to astrology.thunderwizard.com. If you wanna learn this kind of astrology and become an astrologer and give people readings that will change their life for the rest of their life, I do readings that are different from a lot of most other astrologers, where what I give you is stuff that'll work for the rest of your life. You can go to astrologycertification.thunderwizard.com. If you like this, click subscribe, hit the bell button, and then you'll be notified when we get to your specific planet in your Arudha house. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you guys later.